Hi Naptime friends, it's Tish with Naptime Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a resin art tutorial. So I'm going to be showing you how much pigments I put in, how to mix up your resin, and all that good stuff. So we're going to be pouring over this hot mess. I just do not like how it turned out. But I wanted to show you really quickly the crushed glass that I used on this piece. I get this at Michael's and it comes in a ton of different colors, and you just sprinkle it on the resin when it's wet and then it just sets up like that. So we're going to be using Suncatcher today, the Mayron Gold, Steel Blue Epoxy Paste by Lerez, and the Lerez Angel White. So for the Suncatcher, I just put in 2 little scoops, as you could see, and then for the Mayron Gold, I do about the same amount. With my powders, I like to add a little bit more than the 10% rule, because usually the rule is 10% of your pigment to resin ratio. So I like to add a little bit more with the pigments. Check out this steel blue paste. It is like so beautiful and shimmery. I love it. So with the pastes, you want to be sure you stir it up really well. And I just did like a nice pea-size amount on the end of my popsicle stick there. And same thing with the Angel White. And this one is super opaque. If you guys are looking for an opaque white, this is it. And it'll definitely give you awesome cells and lacing in your piece. So we're going to be using Promarine Tabletop Epoxy, and I'm going to be mixing up 12 ounces. So I'm going to take 6 ounces of my part B and pour that into my measuring cup. And I like to pour my part B in first because it's a lot thinner than the part A. And when you pour your part A in on top of the part B, I feel like it mixes it up a little bit. And since the part A is so sticky, if you pour that into your cup first, it can stick to the bottom and the sides of your cup. So it is a little bit harder to mix up your resin if you pour your part A in your cup first. At least it's that way for me. It might not be that way for everybody, but I just like to pour my part B in first. So I went in with 6 ounces of my part A, 6 ounces of my part B, and I needed a little bit more part A, so I was adding a little dollop of that. So now I'm going to mix that up for 3 minutes. And when I mix, I like to kind of go from the bottom and pull upwards. See how I'm doing that? I'm kind of going down and then pulling it up. And I sped this up. I'm not speeding. I'm not mixing this quickly, but I sped it up because I didn't want to bore you guys, have you watch me mix for 3 minutes. And you can see how the resin isn't clear. You'll know when it's ready because it will turn clear, perfectly clear. But I also have a clock in my art room, and I just take a look at it and make sure it's a full 3 minutes and mix it up for the full 3 minutes. I just like to be extra sure that I mix it up right. And when you're mixing, scrape the sides of your cup, scrape the bottom of your cup, scrape off your stirring stick or whatever you're using to stir up your resin. Just be sure that you're really stirring your part A and your part B together, because it's important to mix your resin up properly. Otherwise it's not going to cure properly, and then it's just going to be a disappointment when you check on it 24 hours later. And you can see some bubbles in there, but that's no big deal because we're going to go in with the heat gun and pop all those bubbles anyway and warm up the resin and move it all around. So don't worry about the bubbles. If you're stirring and you're thinking, oh my gosh, look at all these bubbles, you're going to heat it up anyway, so it's not going to matter. So it's been 3 minutes, and now we are ready to mix up our epoxy pastes and our powders. And I just pour the resin right into the cups like this, and then we will be ready to mix up each of the colors. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I like to reuse my cups. So you can see it looks like there's some suncatcher down in the bottom of this angel white cup, but it's actually already cured resin that I used on a previous pour. So one thing that's awesome is you can reuse these cups after you're done pouring, and then your resin's all cured in there. That way, you're not wasting so many cups. And these are just little 3-ounce cups. This one is the Maroon Gold, and I filled that cup up about 2/3 of the way full. And here I'm just pouring my extra clear into 2 extra little cups. I always like to make a little bit of extra resin, just in case, the piece isn't turning out how I wanted. Then I have some clear resin on hand, and I can mix up some more colors or pour some clear resin on. I just like to have it just in case. So this is the steel blue, and when you're mixing up your pastes, be sure to scrape from the bottom and also scrape off your stick as well, because you used your stick to grab the paste out of the jar, and it's going to be really concentrated on that stick. So be sure to scrape your stick off on the side of the cup, and that way you'll make sure all your paste is getting mixed into your resin. This steel blue is so pretty too. Just look at it in the cup here. It's shimmering like crazy. It's a metallic epoxy paste, and you know me, I love my metallics. Here's the angel white, and I'm stirring kind of vigorously. I know some people don't like to do that with their resin, but I haven't had a problem personally with bubbles because I heat it up with my heat gun. So I do like to stir it up pretty vigorously just to make sure I'm stirring it properly and I'm getting all that pigment mixed in there. And see, you just, scrape the side of your stick there. Make sure you're really stirring it up well. With white, you want to just be extra sure you're stirring it up well, because it's a bummer when, it's not mixed up properly and you can tell when you pour your white on there, oh shoot, I didn't mix that up, because you'll be able to see a difference. It'll look darker in certain spots if it's not mixed up properly. Here's the sun catcher, and since the powder was on the bottom of the cup, see how I like to, pull it up from the bottom? So you kind of just take your stick, scrape it on the bottom, and pull it up, just like that. And that'll get the powder kind of going, and then you can start stirring it up. But this stuff is so pretty, you guys. It's got that gold undertone, and I just love it so much. And it's so shimmery. It's something else. I don't know what Suzana puts in it, but man, it's lovely. I love it. And here's the maroon gold. Same thing as with the sun catcher, kind of, scrape it from the bottom and pull it up because the powder is on the bottom of the cup. And then once you get it kind of incorporated, you can start mixing it up a little bit more quickly. And then just, take your stick and kind of rub it along the side of the cup. You want to make sure you mix the powders up especially well, because you don't want to get little lumps of mica powder that aren't mixed up well. That's never fun. Sometimes with mica powder, if you don't stir it up enough, you'll get little lumps in your artwork, and it'll cure that way. I like to call them tadpoles. So take the time with the mica powder and just stir them up a little bit more than you do the pastes. And now we're ready to pour. Here I'm just taking my heat gun and pointing it away from my piece and turning it on for about 5 seconds, just to blow out any dust boogers that may have settled up in there when it wasn't being used. And here I'm just taking my heat gun and heating up the resin that's inside the cup, making sure to get all that clear out of there because resin is too expensive to waste. So now I'm just going to go in with my little popsicle stick here and smooth out that clear resin just to give a little bit of a base layer. Now I'm just going to give my steel blue a little bit more of a stir, and we're going to get ready to pour. I didn't really have any, plan in my head as I was repouring on this piece. I just wanted to make it more blue to match the crushed glass that was on there, because that crushed glass is super blue. So I wanted to make sure that I put some lots of blue on there to make it match a little bit better. Now I'm going in with the suncatcher, just gave it a little bit of an extra stir, and I'm going to pour that right along my steel blue here. Now I'm going to go in with the Angel White and basically just fill in any spots where there needs to be resin. Just going in and making sure that all the spaces on the piece are nice and covered. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but this is an 18-inch pine round, and I picked it up at my local hardware store, Home Depot. And before I had poured the previous layer on it, I primed it by taking it outside and spraying it with 2 coats of spray paint and primer on the front and the back. Now here I'm just going in with some of the Maroon Gold and adding some lines. I didn't want to add a whole bunch because this stuff will take over in a heartbeat. If you're not careful, you will have an entire gold piece on your hands. Now we're ready to add some heat. I'm going in with my heat gun on high heat and just going over the piece now to pop some bubbles, just warming up that resin to make sure it's going to be easy to move around. And here I must have noticed there was a spot with no resin, so I'm going in and adding some more of that steel blue. And then I'm going to go in with my heat gun and move this all around. I also decided I wanted more of the suncatcher, so here I'm just adding some of that right next to the steel blue. And also, something that's really beautiful to do is put some suncatcher on top of that angel white. It's just really lovely. It sits right on top and it gives the angel white a nice shimmer. I decided I wanted to move the resin in a different direction, so I just, moved my piece, and apologize for my head getting in frame there. But I wanted to move the resin in this direction, so it was easier to access if I moved my piece. So here I'm just going in with my heat gun on high heat and moving these colors all around, kind of just blending them, pushing the white over the steel blue and pushing the Maroon Gold over the angel white. Here I got a little bit too heavy-handed with the Maroon Gold. You can see what I was talking about. The Maroon Gold will take over quickly. See that section? It just basically turned pure gold. Here I'm going in with the Angel White and just trying to brighten up that gold section that I made right there. And I'm going to add a little bit to the top portion up here too, just to kind of break up some of this gold. And then I'll go in with my heat gun on high heat and just try to incorporate that white so it's not looking quite as gold. I took one of those cups of clear that we had set aside earlier and mixed up another little 3-ounce cup of steel blue. So here I'm just going in with that and trying to make the piece more blue, which is what I wanted. Here I'm mixing up some more suncatcher, just taking 2 little scoops there and putting it into the cup that we had already mixed the suncatcher up in, and I added some clear resin to that. So I'm just going to add that right on top of the steel blue here, just to give it a little bit of an extra shimmer and pop. Here I'm just going in with a little bit more steel blue. I just wanted more blue in this section right here too. Now I'm going to go in with some more of the gold, and I'm going to try not to be as heavy-handed this time. Now we're ready to blend these lines out so they're not quite as harsh. I like to take my heat gun and turn it at an angle, just like this. See, you can really push that resin when you use your heat gun at an angle like that. Then you can get some really nice effects when you do it that way. Now I'm just going in with a little bit more of the angel white, just to kind of brighten up that blue section a little bit. Now I'm just going in with my heat gun to blend that white out, just so it's not a super harsh line. Here I'm just taking my finger and grabbing any of the runoff, any of the resin runoff off of the table and adding it to the sides. Where that glass was, the resin didn't flow over the edge nicely, so I went around the whole piece and just kind of added the resin that had run off the table there, just so the edges were nice and covered. So here I'm just adding a little bit more maroon gold, and I'm going to heat that up just a little bit. And here I'm just taking my heat gun and holding it directly over my little puddle of maroon gold, and that makes a cute, I like to call them flowers. It doesn't look like it now, but when it cures, you'll see it made a cute little gold flower. And I'm just blending out the gold that I added right along the edge of that glass right there too. Here I'm just going in with the rest of my suncatcher, and I'm just lining all of the crushed glass sections. I just wanted to give them a little bit of extra shimmer along those edges there. I'm going to call this one done, so I'm just running my fingers along the bottom here, making sure there's no drips that are going to drop on the ground while I'm taking it to the dust-free zone. So I will show you guys what it looks like in 24 hours. And here it is. I was trying to get the whole thing in frame, but man, this was heavy with all that glass and the wood and a couple layers of resin. I was having a hard time holding it up, so I'll put a still photo in of the entire piece, how it's hanging up on my wall right now too. So what do you guys think? Look at that Maron gold, how it just sits on top so nice and pretty. And I love how you can see the red and purple underneath that were underneath there in some of the spots too. See, you can kind of see that purple under there. Super pretty. And you can see the shimmer from the suncatcher when I lined all of the crushed glass areas with it. Check it out in the sunlight too. It's just sparkling. I love it. And this is the little flower right here that I was telling you about when I added the Maron gold and then put my heat gun directly over it. This right here. See how it kind of looks like a little gold flower? I love making those. So definitely try out the Maron gold if you guys haven't tried that out yet. I hope you guys liked this video and I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I hope everybody is having an awesome day, and I'll see you on Friday for another video.